I'm trying really hard to get our next guest to move out to the East Coast. I live in New York, and it would be super awesome if I could get from New York to like Boston in 10 minutes. So if you guys could send some tweets to Shervin, tell him to just, that it's not that great here anyway. Get him out to New York, that would be really helpful. Let's do it. Please welcome to the stage Hyperloop One's Shervin Pishevar and our moderator, Matthew Panzarino. Oh, Connie Loizos. I'm so sorry. It's the end of the day. Connie, kick ass out there. Have fun.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hello, Sherpa.
I love New York.
What's not to
we can
love?
do that.
So most of you here, maybe every single one of you knows Shervin. He is a famous entrepreneur, investor, has worked really hard to eradicate some of the hurdles facing foreign-born entrepreneurs in this country. But Shervin's two newest companies are particularly interesting: Sherpa Capital, which is an early-stage venture firm here in San Francisco, and Hyperloop One, a super cool 2-year-old LA-based transportation company that aims to basically shuttle people in these magnetic train-like pods at the speed of sound through a network of tubes.
That was pretty good.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. Scott Stanford and I started Sherpa Capital almost 3 years ago. We just closed our second and third funds, Sherpa Everest and Sherpa Ventures 2. So in 3 years, we've invested in great companies like Uber, Airbnb, Munchery, Ship. We also incubated and helped fund Hyperloop as well.
That's great.
And the basic idea that Scott and I had was that we thought there was a space to go after really big ideas, that we're living in a time where moonshot ideas are possible, and that if you back really visionary entrepreneurs like Travis Kalanick and Brian at Airbnb, and great ideas by people like Elon, who came up with the idea for Hyperloop, that there's a space in venture in Silicon Valley to be courageous and go after really, really big ideas. And the changes that can cause are like what Uber just launched today in Pittsburgh. After a lot of hard work, going after a big, hairy problem, launching self-driving cars in Pittsburgh, which is a historic day. And exactly 100 years ago today, the first human fatality happened by automobile in New York City by an electric car, actually, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating timing.
And 90% of fatalities, car fatalities, are by human error. And so that's going to save millions of lives and take away a lot of pain that's caused by these accidents.
That's terrific. Well, Hyperloop is as ambitious, if not more, than Uber. I think it's endlessly fascinating. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. Now, how much have you raised for the project altogether?
So in the first 18 months of the company's existence, we've raised $130 million.
Okay.
We've recruited 180 people, full-time employees. Recruited the president of Cisco, Rob Lloyd, who's a world-class leader, who helped build Cisco over 20 years as the CEO of Hyperloop One. And he's doing an incredible job. And my co-founder, Josh Geigel, who was at SpaceX before, is one of the world's best engineers, is the president of engineering and board member as well. And we couldn't have raised that capital without the team that we've built and the backing that we got from great investors like Joe Lonsdale at 8VC and Formation 8, and Justin Fisher-Wilson at 137 Ventures, and many other investors around the world.
So I think everybody's interested to know where you are in the project at this point. I know you're planning to unveil something sort of major in the first quarter.
Yeah, so we are full steam ahead, almost the 200 employees, including the team in Nevada. We broke ground 3 weeks ago and are constructing the first full-scale Hyperloop in the world. We did the propulsion test in May in Nevada, and at a site called Apex. We actually bought the land, and we got the regulatory approvals really quickly. So thanks to Governor Sandoval and the mayor of North Las Vegas, we were able to get that really approved very fast in a record time in 6 months. So we did the propulsion test that showed that our propulsion system works. And then in Q1 of this year, we'll make history. We call it our Kitty Hawk moment, inspired by the Wright brothers. And we'll have a full-scale Hyperloop, full tube. We'll have cargo traveling hundreds of miles per hour. And the core idea that the initial idea proposed when I heard about this, when my first discussion with Elon was, could this work for cargo? Because we saw a much bigger disruption happening in terms of cargo disruption of logistics around the world, the impact that would have on the global economy. And he said, no, I don't, actually, if you scale it, that should work. And that was in 2013, January 2013, when we went to Cuba together. And that started this kind of, 2-year process of, meeting with the president and proposing these ideas and, putting all this energy behind making the idea a reality.
And you've come so far, but obviously this is a very early project, and there's far to go. One thing I'd read in your May demonstration, that you didn't have brakes down yet, which is it like 700 miles an hour?
Well, the ultimate goal is to go 700 miles per hour.
Okay.
We had a very short distance to go as fast as we could. So we went, I believe, about 110 miles per hour in 1.7 seconds.
Okay.
And did that in a very short distance using our propulsion system, which is passive levitation. And now the distance of that track is longer, and so we can get to faster and faster speeds. And we'll see that in the full-scale test.
And you will be able to stop? So in January...
No, you'll be able to stop then.
Okay.
In the propulsion test, we didn't have the braking system.
But in the demonstration, the idea is to send it along a path, like a steel tube that's maybe like a mile long, and then shoot it back. That's...
Shoot it back, have cargo in it.
Okay.
And who knows, maybe I'll sit in it.
Please don't. So something I also read recently, when you were talking to Musk, well, first, Musk sort of published a white paper on proposing the idea of a Hyperloop in 2013. And I think it was basically to take on this very expensive project going on in California, this high-speed rail program that's going to cost something like $70 billion. But now, because of the cost of land, you're not going to be able to build between San Francisco and LA to compete with that project, or is that not correct?
That's not correct. The existing high-speed rail project is based on 20th century technology. The reason it upset Elon and upsets me, it's a complete waste of taxpayer money. It's going to go very slow. Thank you. We got some claps there. And so our idea is most likely the first Hyperloop will be built abroad. In the same way that really for the Wright brothers, the international interest was faster than the U.S. interest. So, but we're hoping once we demonstrate this in Q1 of 2017, Hyperloop One has captured the imagination of people around the world. We call transportation the new broadband. And that's been a thesis for Sherpa Capital as well. That's why we've invested in Uber and many other transportation companies like ZenDrive and of course Hyperloop. And the idea is that in the same way the regulators actually took broadband and embraced it and brought broadband to much of the world, and that accelerated the access to information, accelerated democracy movements, accelerated the global economy. Transportation, if you can move people and things faster, you can make the world a smaller place. You can make it a village again. And literally, like, cities would become metro stops. So you would Uber within the city, then you would Hyperloop to a different city. So you could live in SF, work in LA, or like Jordan was saying, go from New York to DC in 30 minutes. And that's a metro stop. And so that makes the world smaller. It doesn't matter where you live, where you work. And it also opens up tremendous opportunities in terms of the ports around the world. By doing cargo and moving cargo this fast, we just signed DP World, which is the third largest port operator in the world. I don't think a lot of people realize how big that was.
That's a study?
Well, it's a study first, and what we're doing is, if that goes well, which it should, what that means is we would actually first build one of the first live cargo loops, Hyperloop One for cargo in Jebel Ali at their port. And what's going on is that the global economy is growing so fast, the ports are stressed. They need more land to handle all of the traffic of all of the commerce that's going on. And so they have to buy real estate. But real estate is more and more expensive, so they have to spend billions and billions of dollars just to buy another stretch of land at the port. So what we can do is we can move ports offshore, whether in the example of Los Angeles, Long Beach Port, which is one of the biggest ports in the world, we can move Long Beach Port into the desert, have the trucks there, move all 8,000 trucks that cause, pollution and clogging of the highways and stress on the infrastructure systems, and then suddenly you open up $200 billion of waterfront property that you can actually develop into low-income housing, more housing options for people, and we see that in San Francisco. It's really hard to live here. It's hard to afford to live here. Oakland Port could open up, and lots of housing would open up there. And that idea can go around the world. DP World, once that study goes through, you're talking about we could scale that to 80 ports in 40 countries around the world.
What about, I want to know how you're going to help me. When am I going to be shooting around in a tube? And I'm wondering, have you talked about partnering with like an Amtrak or, building alongside? They've got 21,000 miles of track in the U.S. alone.
That's a brilliant idea, and I never mentioned that to you, so kudos to you, because that's a brilliant way of thinking about it. Is that my analogy for that is in the same way that SpaceX is helping NASA, we can help Amtrak come to the 21st and 22nd century. And so the existing right-of-ways exist. Amtrak, we could bring Hyperloop One technology to Amtrak and completely change the grid in America. And the first place I would start is the Eastern Corridor. And suddenly the Eastern Corridor would become really just, a bunch of metro stops. And you could live in New York, work in DC, live in more affordable places. And in the end, the true vision is, and this is a conversation that goes back with Joe Lonsdale, my first lunch with him 6 years ago. I proposed this idea of kind of building new cities. And when you look at our existing cities, when you look at our existing infrastructure, the infrastructure is falling apart. America today actually is like a third world country in terms of its infrastructure. We're not investing in infrastructure. The highways, the bridges, everything is old and falling apart. It's embarrassing. In China, they've built 50 cities bigger than New York just in the last 15 years. And we're sitting here arguing about right-of-ways and holding our economy and our people back. And so the job growth that it would bring by bringing these types of ideas, we can actually build completely new cities by unlocking space and time, bending space and time, and allowing you to build a new city that is clean, modern, and has low-income housing available to everyone, and build that in upstate New York in the beautiful farm country,
right,
and then connect people to New York City in 20 minutes.
Well, this is why I say it's even more of a moonshot idea in many ways to me than Uber. But it does have challenges. One is HTT. There is another competitor out there that sort of embraced Elon Musk's white paper and decided to try to pursue this dream as well. I'm just wondering if they factor into your thinking. They were quoted in a Wired article last week saying, basically calling your demonstration in the desert a stunt. They said, oh, they built a roller coaster, good luck. Do you think about those guys?
No. I think if you spend your time thinking about any competition, you're not actually accomplishing much. It's the greatest entrepreneurs that I've seen, and I spent most of my career, I wasn't a VC, never thought I was going to be a VC until Sheryl Sandberg, who's a mentor of mine, said the idea, and I just kept starting companies. And so the lessons I've learned from people like Travis Kalanick and other amazing entrepreneurs, Elon and others, they don't spend their time thinking about competition. They just think about, what am I going to accomplish next? They get up every day and they try to change history. They try to make change, and they inspire their teams to work and focus on their next goals. So my number one thing for Hyperloop One and the team is they're all focused on building the first Hyperloop and making it work. And the fact that we did that in May and demonstrated it is actual action, and action speaks much more stronger than words, always.
Uber has some competition, obviously. Do you think there's room for more than one Hyperloop? I mean, I understand what you're saying about being focused right now, but eventually, you know, like the Wright brothers build the first airplane. Nobody flies Wright brothers planes today, which was an observation that your own president made. So is that the future that you see, or do you sort of see, you know, Hyperloop One kind of dominating?
I mean, it's such a gigantic opportunity that I would be surprised that once people realize, in many ways, people didn't take Uber seriously. When I led the Series A back in 2011, the company was like 1.8 million in revenue, and people thought the valuation was crazy, and it turned out not to be. And we just did the math, and you saw that this is going to work, and it's going to scale really fast. But you know, in that case, you know, when people see that Hyperloop is working and they see what a big impact it's going to have on the world, I wouldn't be surprised that other competitors get funded. That it's just capitalism.
Right. Another challenge, which everyone in the room is aware of, is a lawsuit that was filed, I guess, in July now. Your former co-founder, Brogan Van Brogen, is suing the company, saying the management team lined its pockets, is suing for breach of fiduciary duty. There were some more sordid details, like a rope that had been fashioned into a noose, he said. Hyperloop One came back and said he's a subpar engineer, and by the way, that was a lasso. It's all sort of very strange. Where are things right now?
We're completely committed to, the whole team is full steam ahead. There's almost 200 people there. Josh Geigel, who's a co-founder, has been there since day one, was the second hire 2 weeks after the first hire, has been there from the beginning, and you know, many people around the world know that he's a world-class engineer, made major contributions to at his time at SpaceX, and we're full steam ahead on hitting Q1 goals of building the first Hyperloop. We're not thinking about the past. We're going towards making history.
Okay. Well, I know you don't want to talk much about it. What about, I guess, the timing? This engineering professor also recently said, I think this was in the Wired story, that he just couldn't imagine that this would take years. This is going to take decades. Is that something? Is that it's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, Hyperloop is a decades-long effort. You can't, when you're mixing atoms and bits, you are actually moving steel. You're moving objects, and you're reshaping physical things. So that takes time. Regulatory takes time. So you need governments to actually allow you to build this kind of infrastructure. We're confident that will happen. We've signed 5 projects around the world, from Dubai to Russia to China to the Nordic countries and nations, especially in Finland. And we're going full steam ahead in terms of launching those projects. So you'll see probably the first full live Hyperloop working somewhere in the world by 2021.
Okay. And at what cost, do you think?
Well, it depends on the actual specific project. So I think the Finland study was somewhere around $6 billion or so.
And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Sherpa, and I'm afraid we're somehow almost out of time already, but you've raised $470 million. over 2 funds. That's a lot more than you raised for your debut fund, which was 153 million, 154 million, so 3 times the money. People are worried, Bill Gurley particularly, a VC who's been doing this a long time, that there's just too much money sloshing around. You know, there's too little yield elsewhere in the world, and it's finding its way here, and we're drowning in it. How do you sort of view your role, and how are you going to put this money to work? And
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of tremendous respect for Bill Gurley. He's a friend of mine. I look up to him, and him and Matt Kohler actually referred Uber to me for the Series B. They did the Series A. So whenever he speaks, I listen. The one wrinkle in that analysis is that in many ways, Silicon Valley to me is not a physical place, it's an idea. And it's gone viral and it's spread around the world. And we're just in the beginning of a revolution where we're inspiring humans to think of themselves as entrepreneurs, that every human can be an entrepreneur, and the whole world is a startup itself. And when you think about the world and you think about the next decades and the changes, the tremendous changes that are going to happen, and the technologies and innovations that are going to happen, the disruption that's going to happen in our lives, the opportunity size and the opportunity costs is going to be massive. And so we can't be limited to our thinking in terms of the valley within we live ourselves and we invest ourselves. It's really a movement that's happening across the world. And when you're talking about moonshots and you're talking about infrastructure projects like Hyperloop, it takes billions and billions of dollars to make those happen. The NASA analysis of when John F. Kennedy made the call to put a man on the moon in the 1960s, you think about the computing power that was involved was like the power of a calculator. But they made it happen. They had the conviction to make it happen. And do you know how much they invested in making that happen? They invested almost 2% of the GDP of the nation into putting a man on the moon. What did that accomplish? It was a historic dream by a president who wanted to inspire the world. But the technologies that came out of that innovation completely transformed the rest of the world from then on. We have to have that courage to invest that kind of capital collectively, not just from the venture world, but the world itself and government leaders and so on, to completely transform our lives and improve the quality of people's lives. And it's not going to take venture money that's going to make those changes happen by itself. We have to think bigger than that.
Great. Shervin, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.